Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Bald Explorer live reading at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Hope you're all very well. A bit weary today. I think the heat, this second little heat wave, seems to be getting to me. My son is cooking in the other room, and I can smell beef being grilled, which is rather nice, but it's not for me. Hello to everybody out there. Good to see the lovely Julia, Turbo Stream, Audrey Forbes Hamilton. Nice to see you. Richard, did you get my second WeTransfer email I sent containing some videos from Pembrokeshire? I got the one with the 2 parts in. I'll have to go and check after the event to see. I've been out again filming this morning, and then editing this afternoon, so I haven't really looked at my emails in any great detail. So maybe I have, and maybe I haven't. Billabong O'Neill, greetings everyone, lovely to see you. But I will check, Adrian. I'm looking forward to seeing those. Thank you for the other one that you sent. We'll have part 2 in tomorrow's show. We're reading The Lure of Sussex by R. Thurston Hopkins. And I did a look online, and there's a book called Sussex Rendezvous by the same Thurston, beg your pardon, Thurston Hopkins, R. Thurston Hopkins. So I purchased it. It was a bit expensive, but I thought, well, it might be an interesting read, even if it's just for me to read privately, what have you. It's of that ilk, but it's good to have a few little backup books in case. And I've lost the other little selection, which is gathering over in the back, which will be very nice. And in the post today, I will mention this in the Vogue show if I remember tomorrow, and I don't think he's currently watching at the moment. Nigel Sadler has sent the Voby One-Eyed Kenobi a whole load of guidebooks that he's collected over the years for places mostly in Sussex, including guidebooks to Midhurst, to Sheffield Park Gardens, to Sallington, Dover Castle, which is in Kent, obviously, Southsea Castle, Lullingston Roman Villa, and various places, Pevensey Castle, Hastings Castle, Bodiam Castle, Glastonbury, which is good. Exploring museums in Sussex. That's a very thin book, that one. Shoreham Memories in photographs. Anyway, he says this is from a collection that he's had. He must be thinning them out, and he thought, who else to send them to me? Which I thought would make interesting little videos on the basis of some of those in due course over the next, 10 years, however long it takes to make this nonsense that I do. Anyway, so thank you very much to Nigel Sadler for that. It's very kind. I am slowly making a collection of Sussex books and Sussex info, and obviously it's nice to have places further afield, but I guess because this is the county of my home, in between the travels when the van arrives, one will be still exploring this area. We're just so lucky down here that there is so much to see within such a short space of time. Lee Lawson says, hello, no notification popped up again from YouTube. It's very unpredictable. I know, I never quite understand how or why, but of course I'm on at 4 o'clock every day, so I guess, I'm predictable. Sean James Cameron says, if you download the app to the phone, you get a notification on there. If you download the app. Oh, the YouTube app. I collect leaflets too, says Turbo Stream, on different areas. Nigel Sadler says, hello. I've just been saying a big thank you to you for all these wonderful guidebooks that you sent to me. Lots of places, including Glastonbury and the museums in Sussex. Very thin book, but I guess it lists them. But what a wonderful collection. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate that. I was actually, you know how it is, you pick something up and you just start reading. I was reading about yesterday in Sullington, because that's only up the road from where I am. Fascinating story. Not so much story, but history. Anyway, note at 2:30. Not at 2:30 then. I don't know what the 2:30 business is. Lovely Julia says, the suggestion to unsubscribe, then resubscribe, for the old classic, turn it off and try again, might work. Glad they have arrived. Yes, thank you so much. Very, very kind. Much appreciated. Love all that sort of stuff. If I go into Badger Books, they have bucket loads of those. And I tried not to go in there now, because you end up just coming back with bags and bags of books and no money. Right, we will persevere with our book here. I make that sound as if it's a trial, but actually I've been enjoying this book, The Lure of Sussex. And this is a chapter called Some Records of Sussex Cricket. So we'll see how this goes. So it's a curious book. Right, here we go. Oh, Lee Lawson says, yes, I know about me being regular, but he says sometimes I'm doing other stuff and it's helpful when it pops up. Not sure about the app, Sean. I don't use my phone like that. Fair enough. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's nice if it's like a little alarm clock going off going, oh, by the way. So I don't know why these things, we get used to these little notifications. They stopped doing the emails, didn't they? Anyway, here we go. Some records of Sussex Cricket. Like most throw and hit games played with bats and balls, the origin of cricket may be said to go back to times beyond record. Some students of the game have argued that it was imported from India. Others say the Romans introduced it. But the weight of evidence favours the popular view that to England alone the world is indebted to the game. It is considered highly probable that the word cricket is a corruption of creag, a creation of an old Saxon word signifying a game played with a crooked bat. If this derivation is correct, we can trace the game back for 600 years, for the word appears in the accounts of the royal household in the reign of Edward I, where an item records that John Annie de Leek, chaplain of Prince Edward, paid out 100 shillings for the princes playing at creag and other sports at Westminster. Any true son of Sussex would scout the idea of cricket being the invention of a foreigner. Stars above! Does not the word know that the game was played on Chantonbury Ring in the old Stone Age? No, we in Sussex will not even suffer any encroachment from the shires or the shears on our patent in the game of cricket. And when we say the shears, we mean the rest of the world, except Kent, which has always been reckoned as a kind of inferior province in our kingdom. Oh dear. Sorry, Nigel. What proof have we that cricket is ours by ancestral portion? Heart alive, reader, you are tiresome with your interruptions. I'm sorry, I am very tiresome most of the time. However, I will satisfy you. The word creag, or cricket, may be Saxon, but the fundamental requisite of the game is called by a peculiar word to Sussex. Bat throughout the county means a rough walking stick, and it was given such an implement, and it was with such an implement that the first games were played. When the lusty inhabitants of Sussex were not busy thwacking Picts, Scots, Jutes, Saxons, and Normans with their bats, they retired for a quiet game of cricket. Could any further proof be required? And if it is required, could it be given? Do not fret me further. I won't. The word bat survives in poaching parlance to this day for a bat fowler, which is one who takes birds at night with a large folding net on long poles called a bat fowling net. Well, that sort of figures. Shakespeare has reference to it thus: "You are a gentleman of brave mettle. You would lift the moon out of the sphere if she would continue in it 5 weeks without changing. We would do so, then go bat-fouling. A quote there from The Tempest, Act 2, Scene 1. Yes, well, that's encouraged me to go and have a look at it, hasn't it? But we must not wander away from the track. Cricket was a well-recognised game in Sussex from about 1750. John George Bishop, in his History of Brighton in 1880, says, "The earliest records of cricket show that the game was played in most of the villages of the county in 1747, and matches by Lewes and Chailey, Mayfield and Warbleton, Hastings and other places are frequently alluded to in the newspapers of that period." And singly to relate that Sussex women, as well as men, were then proficients of bat and ball, as will be seen from the following extract from the Lewes Journal on July the 13th, 1747. "On Monday next there will be certainly played in the Artillery Ground in London the match at cricket that has long been talked of between women of Charlton and Singleton in Sussex against the women of West Dean and Chalgrove of the same county." In the same journal, in June 1747, a match of stool ball by women under somewhat novel circumstances. "On Whitsun Monday, a match at cricket was played on Rushlake Green at Warbleton, 14 aside by the inhabitants of the place, which gave great satisfaction to the neighbourhood. The evening concluded with a ball, and the next morning ushered in by 4 o'clock a fine match at stool ball played by the maidens on the same green." Women, therefore, in those days, did not disdain the bat. Returning, however, to cricket, one of the earliest great matches was in June 1749 between Hastings and Pevensey for 100 guineas, 20 guineas a man being deposited, pay and play. It's a bit like Park and Ride, isn't it? West Sussex, too, seemed to be as fond of cricket as East Sussex, for in September 1749 a match was played by the Duke of Richmond's sons and the Hannaker boys, the umpire being Thomas Wymark from the Duke, formerly kept to play at cricket. A proof, this, of how early the game had a roothold in the county. All matches prior to 1774 were played in the old style, that is to say, with the biped wicket 1 foot high and 2 feet wide, with, of course, only one ball. A ball passing between them did not dismiss the batsman, while the black hole was not, as now, before the wicket, but in the middle of the pitch, into which the batsman had to ground his bat before the bowler popped the ball into it. He's lost me completely here. The old bat was a curved cudgel, which Bishop aptly likens to the shape of a butter knife. The bat was made to the height of the elbow, and the balls were bowled along or near the ground underhand. In 1759, the Ringmer Cricket Club is frequently mentioned, and it appears that it was then a kind of coalition team with St. Michael's Paris in Lewes. We read of "great game of cricket on the broil for half a guinea a man," Ringmer and St. Michael's against Rottingdean and Brighthelmstone, which is, of course, Brighton. "The Duke of Richmond," writes Bishop, "with his team twice manfully did battle with the Hamilton Club in 1768, losing the first match but winning the second, and near £1,000 besides. But what may be termed as the royal era of local cricket began about 1788-9. Both the Prince of Wales and his brother, the Duke of York, were exceedingly fond of cricket. There were no records of the Prince's exploits in the field, but it is said he would often be engaged in this manly game with the noblemen and gentlemen of his suite, which was esteemed a very excellent player. He was, however, frequently on the ground as a spectator, and when the great match on the level in August 1790 took place between Brighton and Wadhurst, he was present both days. This was, we believe, the first match in which the celebrated Hammond, acknowledged to be the greatest cricketer of his time, played for Brighton. And on the same side were Mr. Borea, Messrs. J.P. Vallance, Streeter, the miller, Jutton of the cricketers, etc. Brighton lost by 3 wickets. In return, I don't know if people don't like cricket, this is exceedingly boring. And I am one of those people who really is not into cricket, and it goes on this. I may just curtail this a little bit. Anyway, in the returning match played the following week on the Woodburn Down, Brighton won by 5 wickets. And then we get a whole load of bloody match fixings and not fixtures and so on and so forth. And I think we'll get to the end of that. Thanks. Anyway, it's a little too detailed for a general reading. How are we doing? I have loads of local books. I probably don't need to keep all of them. Well, any you don't want, lovely Lee, send them to lovely me, and I will read them. I have a lot of local books and probably... Oh, yes, sorry, I've just read it again. Nigel Sadler says, what? Kent is supposed to be the oldest kingdom, don't you know? Says Nigel. Well, not according to Thurston Hopkins. He's obviously got a thing about it. I get the impression early cricket was more thuggish than the modern counterpart. Yes. It's just not cricket, says TurboStream. Right, I've moved somehow swiftly on to sheep bells and shepherd's crooks. This may be equally inane, but we'll see how we go. The poetry and the music of sheep bells have been dealt with in another part of the book. Yes, and I remember it very well, thank you. Leaving now only their technical points to be considered. Really? That's disturbing. Few sheep bells which have come under my observation have been older than 100 years, but of course their use must go back to those dim ages when iron was first smelted in the Weald and sheep first thrived on downland turf. Perhaps one might say here that the animals were first domesticated by man. Oh, I read that completely with the wrong intonation. Perhaps one might say here that the animals that were first domesticated by man were probably goats and sheep. Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Moses herded the flock by his father-in-law. Indeed, the tending and the feeding and the guarding of these animals is referred to us in most ancient records to have come down to us. Rudyard Kipling's story, The Knife and the Naked Chalk, deals with the old flint workers who tended the sheep on the downs and their constant conflict with wolf packs. Wolf packs? Not foxes or anything like that, but wolf. When was the last wolf in England? Anybody know? The sheep guard of the story describes the ravages of Grey Shepherd, Feet in the Night, the wolf, as follows. The beast gnawed all our country like a bone between his teeth. He came in behind the flocks at watering time and watched them round the dew ponds. He leapt onto the folds between our knees at the shearing. He walked out alongside the grazing flocks and chose his meat on the hoof, while our boys threw flints at him. He crept by night into the huts and licked the babe from between the mother's hands. He called his companions and pulled down men in broad daylight on the naked chalk. Heavens, I can't imagine that was really what was going on. Wolf packs. When was the last wolf pack? If we credit Kipling's story, we may assume that the first sheep bells were made to warn the flintmen of a night attack by the folds by wolves, or perhaps they served a double purpose, firstly that as amulets, and secondly as warning gongs. The custom of hanging bells on the necks of horses, cows and other animals was in use by the Romans and still survives in Switzerland, Egypt, Palestine and all the English counties. I've observed the various makes of Sussex sheep bells for 20 years and can only find two distinct types, which one might say are native to the Downs. The first, with a box-like body, called the Canister sheep bell, and the second, with a wedge-shaped body, known as a cluck bell or clucket.
Is your sheep wearing a clucket, Mrs. Muggeridge? Yes, it is actually a clucket.
Oh, jolly good. This, of course, is a very bald recital of the format, if one may steal a librarian's term for each type. However, it serves to make a clear perceptible line between them. A third type of bell has been mentioned by several writers as a Sussex sheep bell, but territorial history will not approve of its acceptance as such. I refer to the spherical bell, which is called by farmhands and shepherds as a rumbler. It runs in size up to 5 inches in diameter and is made of brass or ball or bell metal, each with a slot cut beneath, along which a metal ball rolls backwards and forwards, the whole giving forth a rumbling sound. This bell is the ancient crotal. Is it crotal? Crottle? And belongs more specifically to riding and sleigh horses than to sheep. It is interesting to note that crottles, exactly like those used on horse bells, were found in British graves suspended to the spears of warriors. The crottle, of course, is not used for wagon horses. That is hardly necessary to mention, since the sets of cup bells are still to be seen and heard on our downland farms. Not anymore. Here is a picture of a bell. This is a sheep bell and neck tackle from a drawing by Irvin Batley, just so you know. Nice little bell. The last wolf was in 1680. Thank you, Morton. Jeff Kellison says there's always a sad thought that something has gone extinct. Sorry, Richard, for saying kind of. That's okay. Don't worry. I say it all the time, but not on purpose. Wiki says the wolf is generally thought to have become extinct during England in the reign of Henry VII from 1785 to 1609, or at least very rare. By this time, wolves had become limited to the Lancashire forests of Blackburn and Bowland, the wild parts of Derbyshire Peak District and the Yorkshire wolds. On another site Julia's found, she says, the last stronghold of the wolf was in the British Isles, was in Ireland. Wolves are regarded as being fairly common in the county, and legislation was passed promoting their destruction in 1652, 1653, and again in 1662. Blimey. I suppose they were a bit of a danger. And TurboStream, no, not TurboStream, Morton is saying snooker is... he's talking about... whatever. Blah, blah, blah. Nip, cozy. That's all I can say. Right, yeah, so he says that these bells are still heard on the downland farms. The canister bell is made of sheet iron cut and bent into shape and riveted at the sides, just in case you wanted to make one up. I have one in my possession, no I don't, which is 5 inches from the top to lip and 14 inches in circumference. To give a bell a mellow tone, it is often coated with brass. The fusion of the brass and the iron, I suppose, was promoted by flux, but the work always appears very patchy. Yes, well, probably had to make hundreds of the bloody things, didn't he? Mr. J.W. Lister, curator of the Hove Museum, who's also apparently the chief librarian, has a sheep bell made at Cheveril Magna in Wiltshire in 1863, which has been very heavily lacquered with brass. Good for him. The Clucket bell has a crown which exceeds the mouth, in which, and taken from a craftsman point of view, is more pleasing in design and finish than the Canister variety. Well, I told you this is going to get a bit technical. The tackle and fittings of our sheep bells apparently now need some description, do they? The bell is attached to the sheep's neck by means of a yoke and straps. The shepherds call the yoke a crook, and the manner... I thought the crook is what they had on the end of their pole. Is that not a crook? How extreme. It's weird that they should have a similar name. And the manner of fitting to the bell is easy to follow from the illustration we just showed you. Just in case that you need to do that. The fitting bit at the crown of the bell is called the bell staple. The loop straps are passed through the staple and afterwards through 2 slots in the crook, and there secured at each end with bone or wooden pegs, which are generally wasted in order to keep them from working loose. The bell tongue is called variously a clapper, a chopper, or a striker. Clapper is good Sussex talk. Clapper. The word also being used for the human tongue. Yes, stop your clapper. In Much Ado About Nothing, we read, "He hath a heart as sound as a bell. His tongue is the clapper, for which his heart thinks his tongue speaks." A bell yoke is not always included in bell furniture. Really? Buckle straps, similar to dog collars, are frequently used to suspend bells from the necks of sheep and lambs. I never knew that. I might point out that the sheep bell finds no place in Sussex dialogue or folklore, a fact which is rather difficult to explain, is it? William Durrant Cooper, in his Provincialisms of the County of Sussex, a book I don't actually have, published in 1853, does not mention a sheep bell from first to last, neither Clucket, Rumbler, or Canister, and yet he is most painstaking in collecting the local names of all agricultural tools and equipment. Blimey. The sheep bell is also an unknown quantity in the Dictionary of the Sussex Dialect by the Reverend W.D. Parish, in spite of the fact that many other antiquated farm implements find a place in its pages. Certainly it is a queer little problem, and one that has sent me searching for sheep bell lore in a dozen or so other collections of Sussexania. But always without netting any information. Poor bugger. Anyway, it cannot be said that the non-inclusion of the sheep bell in the county records about a century ago destroys that the use of them was not so common as we have been led to assume. I should imagine that the vogue for the sheep bell was one that flourished and waned alternately in various parts of Sussex without ever becoming a definite custom. He does go on about this, which is now beginning, like the other one, to get on my wick. But I don't know, I can't keep cutting out these bits that don't interest me. What's brown and sounds like a bell? Dung. I associate cowbells with the Alps and German hills, says TurboStream. I was just thinking that too. Diana says, not sure if I would disturb the wildlife there now. Where? Not sure what she means. Anyway, he goes on. I cannot trace any Sussex smithy where the crotal bells were made, and indeed the casting of a bell would have been outside the operation of a county forge. However, round bells were manufactured in a long range of sizes from 1800 to 1900, principally as cowbells and for the hansom cab and fire engine horses in London. Since motor cabs and motor fire engines have swept away horses in such cases, the crotal bells have become more uncommon year by year. Most of the crotals used as sheep bells in Sussex have been imported by Wiltshire shepherds, and therein we may find the explanation of the initials RW on many of them. Robert Wells, bell founder of Albourne in Wiltshire, was a well-known maker of crotals and ship bells up to 1825, and all the bells cast at his works were stamped with RW. Wells' foundry was afterwards taken over by Messrs. Mears and Steinbank of Whitechapel Road, London, and the latter firm still possesses specimens and the original patterns of the Albourne bells. By golly, how thrilling that is. I'm going to have a glass of water here. For some reason, I can't keep my eyes open today. A sheep bell mysteriously appeared on my grass a few weeks ago. It will appear in a film soon, says Andrew Norris. How exciting. Didn't know that Spain had cowbells either, says TurboStream. Neither did I. Diana Rolfe says, yes, it might have some unforeseen impact. Not sure if we'd have... hang on. There's talking of reintroducing wolves in Scotland. Oh, gosh. Yes, that would be a bit odd, wouldn't it? Seeing as we've had 400 years without them. How are we doing? I'm moving on from sheep bells. I hope you don't mind. It was getting just a bit self-indulgent in some of this. I guess, one's got to look at these old books in the context that they were written. And I imagine that people who are going to read these country affairs were fascinated by this, because it would have been at that point in 1928 when so much of this was just fading from memory. And I guess new processes were coming in, and perhaps they were protecting those memories by writing about them, which is, if you were a researcher on a television program, you wanted to make sure you get the right kind of bell around the neck of the sheep, don't you? This chapter is called In Hilaire Belloc's Country. Mr. Hilaire Belloc, who has long resided at Shipley near Horsham, has given us a Sussex poem through which runs something of the wistfulness of a personal confession. It is not man's most abiding love given is not man's most abiding love given to the earth. Hardly a song of love or regret is without this acknowledgment. Are we not all haunted by certain landscapes which come back unbidden, not as common topographical facts, but as vistures of the soul? Sitting in an ancient Sussex inn, Mr. Belloc says, "There is a divine thirst for something that will not so perish. If there were no such thirst, why should you and I debate such things, or come here to the Lion, either of us, and taste antiquity? If that thirst is there, it is a proof that there is for us some end and some such satisfaction. For my part, as I know nothing else, I cannot but seek it in this invisible good world. I seek it in Sussex, in the nature of my home, and in the tradition of my blood." To Belloc, the high woods of West Sussex are a region untrod by man, save by the favour of the gods. The very soil is full of magic. I never get between the pines, but I smell the Sussex air, nor I ever become on the belt of sand, but my home is there. And along the sky the line of the downs, so noble and so bare, I will gather and carefully make friends of the men of the Sussex Weald. They watch the stars from silent folds, they stiffly plough the field. By them and the God of the South Country, my poor soul shall be healed. I didn't read that terribly well. I'm not very good at poems. Shipley is 6 miles south of Horsham. in the centre of an early Wealden settlement, and brings us nearer to the simple and rude life of our forefathers more completely than any other village in Sussex. That's an interesting statement. I would say that Shipley now is pretty much devoid of life. Here in the oak woods you may find ancient and deserted tracks where you may court solitude from dusk to dawn. Here across the fields you may follow rough cart ruts and cart rakes which have never known the pneumatic tyres of a car. Here you may find the authentic Wealden farmhouse and cottage with ridge laths, weatherboarding, drowsy ingle nooks, cavernous chimneys and Horsham slab roofs. Here you may walk over footways paved with rough slapples, a sort of local sandstone. Here you may call a shim, a flittering shadow, of the men who toiled in the old ironworks, the trespasses of the oak woods. And here you will find the hammer ponds, bell pits and cinder banks. The stream at Shipley says its say on the Sundays to desolate lands, and on weekdays to farm hands and other rustic workers, too engrossed to pay much heed to its thin, smothered accents, which whine a story of how, in King John's days, it was a real river which floated the oak bulks of Shipley down to the shipyards at Shoreham. The name Shipley is probably derived from the Anglo-Saxon word sciop or laeg, sheep pasture, which tells us that it was first of all a patch of forest cleared for sheep. I don't know how you get from Shipley to sciop and lieg. Sciop lieg. Doesn't sound like Shipley, but anyway. Lee, or lay, is still used to denote a field in some parts of Sussex. Oh yes, you can have a lay, can't you? A lay, shiplay. Oh, is that what that means? And a clover field is generally called a clover lay. That's right. In farming terms, a lay is a field, I think, offset from the main crop. Mr. Belloc's house, under the shadow of an all-wooden galleried windmill, is one of those places that seem to make English history a thing of yesterday. To reach the windmill you pass before the house where roses grow, it would seem more by favour than by mellow Tudor bricks. What? I'm sorry, I'll reread that. To reach the windmill you pass before the house where roses grow. It would seem more by favour because the mellow Tudor bricks throw up their colours so sympathetically that from any care or cultivation, and turn up a path of uneven flagstones. I've not read that well, but I can't be asked to try and read that one more time. You get what I mean. Shipley Mill has been silent for 3 years now. Has it? 1928. Yeah, that's about right. Inside it has a stale and antiquated appearance, and rats scuttle in the flour bins whilst jackdaws jabber and bicker in the cupola. So shortly after that, at Shipley Mill, if I remember correctly, it was the volunteers of the Shipley Mill Preservation Society got together, and the county owned it, and they put it back together as I remember it. But I think it got bought. Then it appeared in the television programme Jacob's Steel, something like that. No, Jacob Steele is the estate agent. What's his name? The magician bloke, somebody. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And now, of course, it's in private ownership, and every time I pass it, it looks like it's just being abandoned, which is a real shame because apparently it was in good working order. As the windmills are all disappearing, it is as well to make a thorough inspection of a fine specimen as this one when an opportunity arises. Permission was given to explore it, and I soon climbed its ladder staircase. I should think that the Shipley Mill is the largest in Sussex. It has 5 enormous floors and maybe eyrie under the cupola, to which the miller ascended to grease or repair the wind shaft. The sails radiating from this shaft cause it to revolve, and the power is transferred to an upright shaft which actuates the machinery below. The huge bevelled wooden wheel, which is fixed on the wind shaft, is made of oak and Hollywood teeth. It is braced and clamped in pieces of iron, and has a smooth band of wood for a tire, with a beechwood band brake encircling it. This brake is applied by a simple lever when it is desired to stop the mill. The driving wheel meshes the crown wheel on the top of the central shaft, which runs through the top floor and the floor beneath. The 2 grinding stones are turned by toothed wheels at the base of the central shaft. The ground floor of the 2 above it have been used as storerooms, and the second floor has been converted into a studio. And here is the picture of the mill as was at the time. Jonathan Creek, yeah, that was the word. I don't know where I got Jacob's Ladder from. Thank you very much. The owners would not allow the restoration to continue. We went round the mill when it was working oldest, and it was wonderful. What a shame. I mean, it's, that should not be allowed, that someone buying the property should not allow the restorers to continue to restore the mill. I mean, there should just be some local bylaw that prevents people being able to do a piece of national history like that. It's bonkers, especially when they were all volunteers. The light was fading fast as I climbed up into the small chamber just under the cupula, or cupula, is that right? Cupula, yeah. And all around me was a framework of hoary braces, cross beams and knees, which made me think of the square cabin of a wooden vessel. Indeed, the small window here was much like one of the old-time portholes of a towering 3-decker. The little room was black dark, and a strange uncanny wind sprung from nowhere sent part of the outside track cracking like a goblin telegraph. The ladders creaked as if some miller was going up and down them. As I descended, I said proudly to myself, very few men have ever climbed this ladder, not meaning to be bumptious or conceited over the matter. But no, that's very true, and very few are being given the opportunity now, which is a shame. But the spirit of the mill quickly checked me. At that very moment, I tripped and fell, and as I put out my hands to clutch the ladder, I felt that the steps had been worn hollow and smoothed by the tread of innumerable feet. Then I felt humble, and I came down, stepping very deliberately. Oh, the ghost of Jonathan Creek is there. I stood on the platform which carried the flywheel, and was rewarded with a view of 30 miles of country, with Chantonbury Ring like a huge tortoise on the distant line of the downs. I've not thought of it as a huge tortoise, but I shall from now on. Below me was Hilaire Belloc's house, as fine a mass of timbers, gables, oblique lines and Horsham slabs as one could wish. The roof beams of a modern house could never hold such a large slabs as I saw below me. The weight of that roof would cause one of our desirable suburban houses to collapse in a week. And I reckon if you put that on one of the new builds, those Horsham slabs, it would collapse the instant you did it. All along the front of the house, the rooms stand revealed, the tall glass doors being thrown open wide. Here is Mr. Belloc, book-burdened study, with his massive writing desk and a passage from his essay At the Sign of the Lion, which might perfectly describe this interior. The room within received me like a friend. The open chimney at its end, round which the house is built, was filled with beech logs burning, and the candles, which were set in brass, mixed their yellow light with that of the fire. The long ceiling was low, as are the ceilings of heaven, and oak was there everywhere also, in the beams and in the shelves and the mighty table, for oak was and will be the chief wood of the Weald. I believe that oak was known as the weed of the Weald as well. Mr. Belloc's environment may be described as the country's Mr. Belloc's environment may be described as the country of wood and stone, for here in the silent woods around, timber is plentiful, and the oak trees feed on the stiff Wealden clay. From these woods came a great quantity of the ash, cloth yard shafts, whatever that might be, which were used by our archers at Agincourt when 10,000 Frenchmen fell before a hail of arrows tipped with Sussex iron and feathered, I suppose, with Sussex goose feathers. Now, what's her name? Juliet Barker, I think it is. Juliet Barker wrote a book called Agincourt. Recommend it. I've got it on my shelf in the other room. And she goes into huge detail, it's fascinating, of all the implements that you would have on the baggage train when Henry V, I think it was, who went to Agincourt, and all that, so where the arrows came from and the quantity of arrows needed and where the goose feathers were reared and all that information. She went through the old books, basically the account books, where we, who fortunately have been very good at keeping since Norman days, these books of accounts and things and what is still in extant. And she talks about all that, and it's things that you just don't, you think, oh yeah, off they went, the knights to the Battle of Agincourt, yeah, there they go. And we all learn that the two-fingered salute is, from the fact that we still have our fingers and the French didn't. And Juliet Barker goes into all this sort of the trees that we used and where the food came from and the carts that were made and all of this. And it's so detailed and fascinating. I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved that book. She has written another book which I've got on my shelf. I have yet to read. Anyway, yes. Among the industries around Shipley, how are we doing on the time? We're coming close. Among the industries around Shipley were also the making of horseshoes and quarrels, or wooden bolts, for crossbows. About £10 per 1,000 were paid for horseshoes in those days, and £14 10 shillings and 4pence was paid to the Sheriff of Sussex in 1338 in consideration of 6,000 quarrels, or wooden bolts for crossbows, to be carted in waggons to the Tower of London. The horseshoes were made at the iron forges, which were working day and night by nearly every stream. To the south of Mr. Belloc's house, the dead industry has left many names where the forges once stood. Smoke House, behind the Blacksmith's Arms at Shipley, and Hammer Farm to the south mark the sites of 2 furnaces. Then there are the quarries, now little worked, but the fine stone slabs found in and about every house and cottage are the relics of this once important industry. There is a most interesting variety of stone, used as stepping stones at the Shipley cottages, which is known as Sussex Marble. It is a calcareous stone formed by the deposit of freshwater shells and takes a high polish. Much of it was employed in building Canterbury Cathedral, where it is called Petworth marble, being found in the neighbourhood of that town in the highest perfection. It was also used in Chichester Cathedral and the building of Petworth House. Outside the village outside the village blacksmith shop at Shipley, a traction engine crushed a slab of this Sussex marble with its ponderous wheels, and I picked up a handful of beautiful little shells, each one perfect and 1,000,000 years old. Many of the older cottages have a rough paving of ironstone from the gate to the door. It not only looks well and is durable, but it is necessary to have something hard and edged, so that the labourer may scrape the stiff clay from his boots before he enters. A cottage next to the Blacksmith Arms has some notable paving slabs at its entrance. But the finest stone causeway at Shipley is the one that runs by the post office and through the churchyard. It was put down 8 centuries ago by the Knights Templar. If you are a stone seeker, this causeway will charm you in every way, for it is satisfying to the eye, and each stone is worthy of an individual name. Here you will find every variety of wavy-faced stone. 1,000,000 years ago, these grooved and wavy stones were formed beneath the ebb and flow of shallow water. Some of the stones, worn and polished by running water, show markings clearly as agate, while here and there a dull blue stone in this path of timeless masonry shows a white glare like the track of a snail over its face. The dear delights of the stone seeker, I hope, grow apparent. These causeways around Shipley, wholly apart from the antiquarian considerations, are most satisfying and have a kind of heroic simplicity about them. Mr. Hilaire Belloc is a great lover of stone-flagged paths, and the 2 causeways at King's Land, his house, contains some fine specimens of ripple-marked paving. One causeway runs along the face of the house, and the other extends along the courtyard. There is also a good pitched pavement of rounded stones under his windmill. And that's where we're going to leave it today. For the next chapter is Galsworthy's West Sussex Environment. Galsworthy's West Sussex Environment. No idea what that's going to entail, but perhaps some of the places in jolly old West Sussex. Let's have a quick look at some of the comments before we go. The owners would not allow... Oh, yes, I read that. Goblin Telegraph. Yes, a bit like the Goblin Doomsayer. The room within received me like a friend. Yes, nice personification. The wood of the weald, nice alliteration. Morton, you notice the words of these books very well. You're very adept to that. Well done. Justin Jones says, Grade 2 listed in 1959 according to Historic England website. Grade 2, is that what, Belloc's house or the windmill? TurboStream says the only mill that still grinds corn in Birmingham is Sar Hole Mill on the banks of the River Cole. J.R.R. Tolkien played nearby as a child. He may well have been influenced by that mill in some of his writing. Michael White says the barbed arrow was the worst as it had to be pushed through the body to get it out. Henry V had a wound, did he not, that I believe they had to do the same thing with him. He had a scar down there, and he nearly died. I think this happened, I can't remember if this happened before Agincourt or after. Morton Lewis says Henry V was the Naz. The French still hate him to this day. My friend from Paris, Charlotte, chokes when you mention Harry. What does the Naz mean? That's an interesting term of phrase. The turbo streams, but water-powered, not wind. Oh, a mill that was water-powered. Yes, of course. Michael White says, when French ladies have a certain monthly event, they say the English are coming. I try to be delicate. Very good. Thanks. The bloody English, eh? Michael White says when... Oh, yes, I've just read that. Sorry. Michael White, the painters and decorators. Yes. And Morton says, Michael, I did a history tour of the Loire Valley in 2011, and the antics of Henry V's forces still leave a foul taste even to this day. Good gracious. Galsworthy lived at Bury at one time. Who was Galsworthy? Was he a poet? Professional English languager and lit teacher for 37 years. Oh right, that's what Morton Lewis did. The Naz, the dog's bollocks. Fair enough. And I managed to get that before it was held for review. But we know what you mean, the dog's bollocks. Yes, good. Well, there we are. Thank you so much for joining me today. Wednesday is tomorrow. That'll be another video out for you. I've been out this morning testing my gimbal, which I bought about 2 to 3 months ago. Tried it once, found it bloody awkward, put it away to look at another day, never saw the light of day, and I dragged it out yesterday for a test, and I thought I'll go out today and actually make a video with it. So that's what I've done today, and I think it's one of those things I've just got to learn anyway. Trying to improve the quality of the camera quality of the videos. Just got a bit fed up with GoPros. However, having used this today, I can tell you that GoPros is just nice and easy. You switch them on and you just start filming, although there's a lot of issues with the colours and the light and various things. But I will persevere. And I'm hoping to get my van in a couple of weeks' time, when we're back from the canal trip. So that could be quite good. Anyway, Morton, could you slightly rephrase your last message, please? The Forsyth Saga, Andrew. Oh, he wrote the Forsyth Saga. Oh, did he? Right. Thank you very much, Galsworthy. I think both our ancestors were Norman, Morton. Bye all. Off to use up marrow glut for tea. Sounds great. Well, there we go. Thank you very much. Look after yourselves, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow. Take care and enjoy yourselves. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.